I've tried most of the summoning games and rituals that you can find across the web or on Reddit. Games like the Midnight Man or the Elevator game, as well as the more ritualistic ones like the Dark Reflection Ritual or the Three Kings Ritual, even the silly Charlie Charlie Challenge. None of them gave me what I was looking for. That is to say, none of them worked like they were supposed to. At least, not for me. I mean, sure, some scared me more than others, but after the adrenaline of the unknown wore off, I found myself and my friends just staring at each other in the dark. We gave in to our own fears and would make up scenarios of, oh, what if this happened, or what if that happened? Most of it was scary in a fun way, but it wasn't real. Then I found the What If Man. I had seen a couple different postings and threads, all with similar titles like, What if I found him at midnight? Or asking what if I stayed with her? There were several others, and the words what if were always either capitalized or in italics. Sometimes the words would have a strike through them. Whatever the difference was, it was only on the words what if. So I began to track every post and comment and video I could find. I began to search for the source video or post. You know, the one someone originally made as a creepypasta and others elaborated on. That is, after all, how the infamous Slender Man began. The problem was, I couldn't find the actual source video or post. Granted, I'm not exactly a hackerman type. I still know how to use a computer and compare the dates to find the earliest one. But, of everything I found, none of them went further back than August 21st, 2017. And on that date, there were 3 videos and 7 different posts about the What If Man. I won't go into detail about those, because the short version is they were all experiences with a What If Man. They didn't tell me exactly how they met him or summoned him. They did all share the same exact description of what happens when you meet the man, but it still couldn't prepare me at all for what happened when I finally met him. After downloading the videos and copying the posts about him, I decided on a direct approach. I messaged one of the video uploaders and never got a reply. Another told me to get lost and never contact him again. A bit melodramatic, that one. The third, though. The third asked me why. This was the one who would talk. Nobody asks why unless they have the information being asked about. So, I told the uploader exactly why. I sent it in a direct message. Thanks for getting back to me. I'll be honest, I've tried all the other crap online. It's sort of a twisted hobby of mine, and I found this challenge to be the most obscure so far. I was hoping you can give me some details and instructions on how it all works. Signed, Dave. I waited 3 days for a reply, but when I finally got the alert of a new message, I opened it quickly. Dave, this isn't a challenge or trend. People have gotten hurt doing this. You could tell everyone it's a sham, or just forget about it entirely. Anything would be better than looking for the What If Man. But if you're determined to talk to him, I'll tell you how. If only to make sure you're aware of the risks that someone else might not warn you about. But seriously, you don't want to meet him. Please consider your life and your sanity. Signed, Enon. The reply sounded like a poor attempt to lure me in. Nothing makes you look down faster than someone saying, hey, don't look down. Enon, whoever that was, wanted me to meet the What If Man. They just didn't want to look eager. I wrote back. Enon, I appreciate your concern, but I would still like you to tell me everything you know, such as how to meet him, what happens when I do. Everything I've seen so far has been non-specific. Signed, Dave. This time, the reply happened within minutes. The what if man can tell you or show you anything you ask him to. He doesn't lie or manipulate the answer in any way. That's not why he's dangerous. It's because the more you ask, the more you lose. Remember that above all else, the more you ask, the more you lose. It's a trade, I think. You ask him, and in return, you give some of your sanity or your soul or something. Whatever it is, it's strong enough to mess you up. I know a guy that lost everything, and now he sits in a room chewing on his shirt all day. You don't want that to be you, so you need to be careful. I once talked to someone that had summoned him a few times, and they were fine. But someone else asked him too much, and they killed themselves shortly after. This is your last chance to leave it be. Signed, Enon. What he or she was telling me was very generic to these types of games. I've heard of everything, from abduction to insanity to time travel even. As I said before, I've done all the games before, and nothing ever happened. So, of course, I replied again. One question. How do I meet the what if man? This time, the reply took longer. I checked my phone every few hours, and whenever I got a notification that wasn't a reply, I grew more and more anxious and irritated. I was lured in and at the edge of my seat for a week before I got my answer. Dave, I don't want to hear about your experience with the what if man, if it works or not. I am asking you in return to delete all of our communication logs and forget everything about me. I should have dropped this account years ago anyway. I guess I was waiting for someone to come along so I could do this one last time. Either way, this will be the last message you receive from me. The instructions. The what if man can be anyone. It's not one singular entity or shape. I don't know if it assumes the form of a man or takes over a man. Either way, he could be anyone. And you'll know who he is by the reply he gives you. At exactly midnight, you must have a foot on each side of a doorway. It doesn't matter if it's your home or office or a motel. Any doorway. Start at 11:59, and while it's midnight, you leave the doorway. Several people can do this, but only one person who takes the first step can ask him questions. Walk any direction on the nearest road or sidewalk. Sometimes it comes quickly, and sometimes it takes a while. You'll see someone walking towards you. It could be someone young or old, or even walking a dog. As this person gets close to you, you ask, "Are you him?" Loud and clear. You can start with hello or excuse me if you'd like, but the first question you must ask is, "Are you him?" If the person doesn't reply at all, then you need to go back to the doorway right away and get inside. Don't stay outside and don't go anywhere else. Honestly, I'm not sure why. I don't know what happens. If he asks, "What if I am?" then you've done it. If they say anything else, then you've done something wrong and it's just a stranger. If he asks, "What if I am?" then he will stop walking and wait for your questions. You've got him. He will only answer questions beginning with "What if?" And if he can't tell you the answer, then he will look directly into your eyes and show you the answer. You won't feel the trade at first. It takes a few days, so you must be very careful how many questions you ask. It takes more or less from different people. You won't be permanently changed if you don't go over the limit. You'll just have migraines and maybe high anxiety for a few days. But every time you go back to him, it costs more. So again, be careful. And when you're done asking questions, thank the what if man for answering your questions, then you leave him and don't look back. Good luck, Dave. Whatever information you share with others is on your own. It's your burden. Signed, Enon. I read the reply another time, really absorbing the instructions. I copied the instructions to a new document, printed out a copy to hold, and reread at my leisure. And, as part of the bargain, I deleted the message thread and Enon's contact. Probably a useless action since Enon said they wouldn't be using the account again. But I'm an honest man, and it was expected of me. Frankly, it sounded so basic, so plain. Nothing like the Three Kings ritual or the elevator game that takes time and items and faith. No, this was just simply go outside and meet someone. Meet him. I wasn't sure if I would drag my friends into this one. It's something I could easily do alone. Looking back, I should have brought someone with me, at least for the discussion after. Either way, that was before I knew what I know now. I guess that's kind of his whole thing. I knew that I was going to do it that night. I didn't need to prepare anything or buy anything, so why not? It was already 6 p.m. when I read the reply, so I had time to go get something to eat, and most importantly, think about what I would ask, or how many questions I would ask. See, I still don't know what determines how many questions a person can ask. I got my favorite fast food for dinner, a little bit of Taco Bell. I made sure my phone was fully charged, and to kill the remaining time, I searched online for anything else about the What If Man. This is where things began to turn. I couldn't find anything. Nothing at all. No videos, no posts, nothing I had bookmarked before, and not even my downloads that I saved to my computer. I couldn't find a damn thing about the What If Man. It didn't make any sense because Enon didn't post anything else, so he couldn't have deleted them. And not only that, but whatever goes online stays online. Except this. After I exhausted my search engines, I decided to make a quick list of what I would or should ask. It was 11:30 now. I eyed the door eagerly and wrote down a couple questions. I'll list them here. What if I had stayed in college? What if I had not broken up with Jenna? What if I had $1 billion? What would that be like? I wondered how the question in the question would work. What if my father hadn't died? That one. That one I was most curious about, but also the most nervous to write down at all. I looked up from my writing to see that it was already 11:58. I put the paper in my pocket and opened the door, placing 1 foot outside and 1 foot inside, with my nose facing the doorframe, trying my hardest to line up perfectly down the middle. I held my phone to my face and watched the clock. Luckily, I lived in the elderly part of the apartment complex, so most of my immediate neighbors were asleep. Something I hated at first, knowing that everyone my age was living on the other end of the complex. Apparently, the apartment manager had tried to keep the age groups together to keep an eye on everyone, but for whatever reason, I got the short end of the stick. 11:59. I raised my phone so I could see it, just holding my eyes to the side, nose almost against the doorframe. Watching, my breathing slowed, and I could feel that rush of anticipation begin. 12. I stepped fully outside the door, hesitated. Should I close it? What if I needed to get back inside quickly? I didn't want to ruin this chance, so I left the door open and walked casually towards the sidewalk. I never even considered which way I would turn, so I instinctively turned right and began to walk. My eyes searched every window, every door, every shadow behind the trees. I looked for any sign of movement. I walked nearly around the entire complex. Didn't see a soul. I'll be honest, I felt a little foolish as always. Another internet game ending with nothing but wasted time. But no sooner had I given up than I saw ahead of me someone walking. Too far to make out any features, my heart began to race. The person was walking at a slow and steady pace, with a bit of a hobble. Maybe it was one of the older folks living around here on a midnight stroll. Or maybe it wasn't. Who I could now see was in fact a man, was now close enough for me to see his face. He was an elderly and smiled at me as if to say hello. He was just ahead of me. He was beside me. My heart was thundering in my chest, and I blurted out, "Excuse me, are you him?" The man stopped walking, the smile still on his face. We looked at each other for what felt like minutes, and he just stared blankly at me, until finally, he said it. "What if I am?" I felt my stomach drop, and my lungs began to work excessively. I forced myself to calm down before saying anything else. "You're really him?" I muttered. He, of course, did not answer. He merely smiled at me, waiting for the proper phrasing. Shaky hands pulled a piece of paper from my pocket. Thank God I'd brought it, because in that moment, I couldn't remember anything I was going to ask. I looked down, then back at the man. "What if I'd stayed in college?" I asked. He nodded, a bit absently, as old people do, then replied, "You would hate it. You'd be working hard hours for good pay, but at the cost of your social life and your connections. You would know every day that being a physical therapist sounds good in theory, but it's not who you are. But you would stay and work because you earn that job, whether you like it or not." I was stunned. Hell, that's an understatement. I was flabbergasted. Anyone could have replied with a generic answer, but he knew. The what-if man knew exactly what I was asking. I glanced at the paper again. The other question seemed a bit irrelevant. If I could know the answer to anything at all, why the hell would it matter what I would do with $1 billion? I asked the real questions I wanted answered. What if my father hadn't died? I asked. The what-if man slowly reached up towards me. At first, I thought about stepping back or pulling away, but I didn't. I couldn't. He touched my face. His hand rested on my cheek, and I saw it. I saw it like flashbacks in a movie. That night he died in the accident, he instead came home. He picked me up and hugged me like he had always done. He kissed my mother. Next, I was a few years older. I stormed away from him and slammed the door. He walked up to the door and rested a hand on it, apparently deciding against arguing with teenage me. Next, he was at my high school graduation. Next, I was hugging him and congratulating him on... He was expecting another child. Next, she was born, and I hugged and cried with my parents. Next, I shook his hand as I left for college. Next, they were at my graduation. Next, I was introducing them to my girlfriend. It stopped. The memories had apparently caught up to what would have been right now. The emotions all hit me at once. Every feeling from sadness to joy, happiness, excitement, all of it hit me as I buckled to my knees. Then, it was all ripped away from me as reality came crashing back. I threw up on the sidewalk, on my own hands, and I couldn't even stop it. The emotional pain was something I had never felt before. I wiped my hands off on the nearby grass then stood up. He was unfazed by my reaction. He merely stared at me with a smile. "What if I asked you what you are?" I asked quickly. The what if man responded. "I would tell you that I am as old as possibility itself. I would tell you that I see and feel everything I show people. I would tell you that I have seen the possibilities of pharaohs and kings, and I have seen the possibilities of the rich and the poor. I would tell you that I am the keeper of the unknown and the thief of hope." His answer set me back. The thief of hope? What the hell does that mean? At the time, I had no idea what he meant. I do now, of course. I looked around the street, empty except for him and I. I wanted to ask him one more thing, something that now seems stupid, but at the time, I really did want to know. What if I hadn't broken up with Jenna? You would have been together for 5 years. You would have loved her more than you would ever love another. You would do anything for her, and after 5 years, she would leave you. She would leave you a broken man. She would leave and find the man she will marry. She would leave you an emotionally empty man filled with anger, and you would hate her forever. That answer hit me harder than I would have expected. I felt confused and a little angry at the what if man and myself for what I have allowed her to do. I knew I should stop there, but in my nervous excitement, I asked one more question, the last one. What if I asked you too many questions? His smile widened, and for the first time, I felt uneasy. His smile didn't fit his face. He looked so eager, so wide and terrible, that I took a step back. Thankfully, he did not move. Your mind would decay. You would think about the things I have told you. You would dwell on them. You would despise the bad things, and you would pray to relive the good things I have shown you. You would come to learn that everything you hope for is gone, because now you know how things could have been. You would come back to me several times until all that you are is consumed, and the last question you would ask me would be, what if I had never met you? And I would show you your answer. His wide grin returned to normal, and he merely looked at me again. I took another step back from the what if man. His response made me cold. It sent chills down my spine, and the hair on my arms stood up. I was done. I didn't want to say another word to him, but I had to. "Thank you," I said. "Thank you for answering my questions." Wordlessly, the what if man held up his fist with the back of his knuckles towards me, and one at a time, he raised a finger until all 5 of them were held up. 5 fingers for 5 questions. He smiled and tilted his head downwards. I turned and continued the way I'd been walking. As much as I wanted to look back one last time and see if he was gone or if he was just standing there, I equally was terrified to know the answer. I had asked him 5 questions. They had all come out so fast I didn't realize how many it had been. Was it too many? Was it just enough? Thoughts raced through my mind as I walked. I finished the walk around the complex and made it back to my open door. I stepped inside, closed and locked the door. I felt sick and unclean, like I had just been somewhere I wasn't supposed to go. I sat alone in my apartment, with every light on, until the sun came up and banished the darkness away. Then, I began to write this. Because everything I'd found online about the what if man was gone. And I can't keep this just in my head. I had to tell someone. I had to get it out, because I know that someone out there has questions that they want answered, and they deserve to know, whatever the cost. So, now you know how to meet the what if man. Just be careful how many questions you ask. I asked him 5 questions. I don't know if it's lack of sleep or the adrenaline crash, but I can feel a headache starting, and I'm sure it's just the paranoia right now. But I can't help but wonder, what would happen? No, what if? What if I could ask him just one more question?